Hello everyone. This is the first of my fun fact newsletter things, about 2 months later than I had intended it. I'm hoping to be able to do one of these every week or two now that I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'm not going to commit to a schedule until mid-February or March. These clips that I'm showing are from my family's trip to Port Aransas, Texas. While it was significantly cooler and cloudier than we had anticipated, it was a great place to see wildlife, especially birds. Originally, I was going to do a video on all the birds that I saw while I was there, but for a variety of reasons, including my complete inexperience using a camcorder without a tripod, my inability to identify birds, and my not actually having enough footage to talk over, I decided to ditch that project. Instead, I'm going to talk about one of the birds that I saw, and in my opinion, it's the most interesting of all of them. Anyone who was in my 6th grade class probably remembers our discussion of the Sandhill cranes, which fly by the thousands to a state park a few hours from our school. Well, they're interesting and spectacular in their own right, and make a really cool noise. Our discussion of the cranes also touched upon one of their genetic cousins, the whooping crane. They stand about 5 feet tall, about a foot taller than a sandhill crane. They have a wingspan of about 7.5 feet. They come to coastal Texas in the winter, where they feed on blue crabs and other crustaceans buried beneath the salt flats, and generally they live 22 to 24 years. Unlike the sandhills, which are visible in the background, whooping cranes travel solo or in mated pairs, like the two shown here. However, the biggest difference between these birds isn't their size or behavior or diet, it's their population. While there are about 450,000 sandhill cranes, the wild whooping crane population is only a little over 400. For me, the most disturbing part about this is I can actually comprehend how many 400 is. People are used to hearing extreme numbers in relation to science. We're 93 million miles from the sun, the Earth is 4 billion years old, and there are trillion atoms in a human body. No matter how much you try, you will never actually be able to understand just how far away Mars is, or how big the Earth is. But with very little effort, you can wrap your head around the number of 400. Having seen these two birds, I have seen about 0.5% of all the whooping cranes on the planet. What is even more awe-inspiring is the fact that these birds have been on the rebound for 70 years. In 1941, there were exactly 23 whooping cranes, total. Only 15 of those were adults living in the wild. Like most endangered animals, the cause of the issue was habitat loss and hunting, but with international conservation efforts between Canada and the US, and stiff penalties in place for anyone who kills them, which unfortunately does still happen occasionally, the population is growing at a rate of about 4% a year. Despite this progress, there is still cause for concern, as is illustrated by these maps. The range map for most birds looks a little like this, or this, depending upon how widespread it is. It has 3 broad areas marked for their range while breeding, during migration, and in the winter. The whooping crane's range map, however, looks a little bit more like this. There's a couple of issues with this map. First, the obvious, it's pretty empty. Second, there are only 2 flocks. The western flock, which has about 300 birds which migrate between Ontario and Port Aransas, Texas, and the eastern flock, with about 100 birds that migrate between Wisconsin and Florida. They return to the same relatively small area of Gulf Coast every year, which means that a single very poorly timed hurricane could wipe out a significant portion of the population. There's also the fact that the eastern flock isn't entirely a wild flock. This migration didn't exist until 2001, when 9 cranes were raised in captivity and were released. The issue with this was, since there wasn't a flock to follow and they had never been in the wild before, they had no idea where to go. For this reason, the first year, and for every year since, a new group of chicks has been shown the route via an ultralight mocked up to look like a crane. There have been attempts to create other flocks. One attempt tried to replace sandhill eggs in Colorado with whooping crane eggs, and while they were raised successfully by the sandhills, they also tried to mate with the sandhills, which didn't work out too well for them. The flock died off, and we are left with just the 2. Nevertheless, I'm consistently impressed with humanity's ability to protect and save endangered species such as the whooping crane, and given the success that conservation efforts have had so far, I think that one day they will be counted with the bald eagle and the American alligator as conservation success stories. In the meantime, though, I'm thrilled to have had the chance to see these 2 birds, and I hope that one day soon, these avian dinosaurs will have the incomprehensibly large population that they deserve. So, sorry about the rough editing, effects, sound, etc. I just got my own camcorder and I'm still kind of getting used to both the hardware and the software. If you're interested in learning more, I got most of my info from these sites. Links are in the description, and hopefully I'll have another video up within the next week or 2. In the meantime, here's more sandhill crane noises.